The battlefield was silent. Not because war had ended, but because the last breath had been drawn. The final cry had echoed into eternity, and blood had soaked the earth so deeply that it no longer recognized the color of peace. Crows circled above, not as scavengers but as witnesses, black-feathered heralds of what lay beyond. Beneath them a warrior lay fallen. His sword had shattered. His shield cracked. His eyes, once filled with the fire of life, stared unblinking at a sky stained crimson by the setting sun. But though his heart had stopped, something else stirred, something older, something summoned not by the cries of the dying, but by the will of gods. He had died in battle, and in Norse mythology that meant one thing. The Valkyries were coming. First came the wind, colder than ice, sharper than steel. Then the air shimmered, and they appeared winged, and radiant eyes glowing with stormlight, clad in armor that pulsed with divine authority. They did not speak. They did not weep. They descended like judgment, like prophecy fulfilled, like fate itself had pulled back the veil. One among them, Skuld, knelt beside the fallen man. She touched his brow, and in that instant, his broken body no longer mattered. His wounds were forgotten. His breath returned, but not as flesh, as essence, as glory. His soul rose, and Valhalla opened its gates. It is not easy to describe Valhalla. Words fail. Songs falter. It is not a palace, not merely a hall. It is the echo of all glory, the dream of every warrior, the reward for those who gave everything without hesitation. Its roof is made of golden shields, each one forged from the triumphs of the brave. Its walls are spears, tall and true, taken from battlefields where legends were born. The gates, massive and burning with sacred runes, do not open for kings or poets, but for the worthy, the fallen, the chosen. And beyond those gates, Odin's hall. The All-Father himself waits there, not as a god atop a throne, but as the host of the eternal feast, the general of the endless war to come. He greets every soul by name, because every soul in Valhalla has earned it. The warrior stepped in. He was no longer what he had been. Not a farmer's son, not a soldier, not a corpse. He was an Einherjar now, one of the chosen dead, bound not to rest but to prepare. For Valhalla is not paradise in the way mortals imagine. It is not peace. It is not escape. It is purpose. It is training for the end of all things. Each day the Einherjar fight. Sword against sword, shield against axe, muscle against magic. They clash in glorious battle, dying again and again, only to rise as the sun sets and join one another at the great feast, laughing with the very warriors who had slain them. Their wounds fade, their strength grows, their spirits sharpen like blades drawn across whetstone. This is the cycle: blood by day, mead by night, battle eternal. Because they are not preparing for joy. They are preparing for Ragnarok, the end of days, the final war. When the 9 realms shatter, when gods fall and monsters rise, Odin will call them forth, his army of the honored dead, to stand against the dark and die one last time with meaning. So, the warrior newly risen learns. He is taught not just how to fight, but why to fight. He trains beside heroes from every age. Shield maidens who stood alone against legions. Kings who died on their knees with dignity. Slaves who broke chains with bare hands. All stories, all warriors, all equals in Valhalla. Time moves strangely in this place. It does not pass, it builds. Each day is heavier than the last, not from burden, but from meaning. The mead flows. The halls echo with song. And still they fight. Not out of hatred, not for power, but because the end is coming, and when it does, they must be ready. Odin watches. One eye blind to the present, the other fixed on the future. He walks the halls at dusk, whispering runes to the mead, carving fate into the rafters. He speaks little, but his silence commands. The Valkyries return daily with new souls. Each time they pass through the gates, the other Einherjar stop. They remember, they honor, because every new arrival is not just a brother in arms. They are a reminder that life ends, that battle continues, that Valhalla is not a reward, it is a promise. And so the warrior, once broken and bleeding beneath the sky, now holds his sword again, not because he must, but because he was chosen to. And somewhere far beyond the edge of the sky, in a realm where shadows stir and serpents sleep, a great wolf shifts in his chains. Ragnarok waits, and Valhalla prepares. Morning in Valhalla does not rise with gentle light, but with the call of horns, ancient and thunderous, echoing from the very bones of the hall itself. The Einherjar awaken not from sleep, but from stillness, as if death had become their resting breath and glory, their first exhale. Armor clasps, blades gleam. The ground shakes as thousands of warriors step forward side by side, brothers and sisters, not by blood but by sacrifice. The field beyond the gates stretches endless and golden, where the sun never burns, yet never fades. Here they fight, not to win, not to conquer, but to remember who they were, who they are, and what awaits beyond the horizon. They fall, they rise again and again. This is the rhythm of Valhalla. But not all wounds are healed by resurrection. There are those who begin to wonder. One such warrior, Ulrich, a chieftain in life, proud and grim in death, has fought every day since his arrival. His scars mark his face, even though they vanish by night. He counts them not with pride, but with quiet unease. He begins to ask what others try not to. How long? How long must we prepare? How long until the gods deem us ready? How long until Ragnarok truly comes? And what if it never does? Such thoughts are dangerous in Valhalla. They spread like frost in spring. Others hear him, Ursa the shield maiden, who once led warriors into fire with songs. Geir the silent, whose hands shake even when the mead flows freely. Run, whose laughter hides eyes that never stop watching the Valkyries when they arrive. They speak in whispers between battles and glances across the great tables during the feast. There is no rebellion, not yet, only restlessness. But even in Valhalla, unrest stirs the wind. The Valkyries sense it. These divine choosers of the slain, once thought distant and cold, now descend not only as messengers, but as watchers. They look not only at valor, but at thoughts. Their wings beat slower. Their eyes linger longer. One among them, Brynhilda, begins to feel torn. She has brought thousands into this hall, heroes, kings, beasts in flesh. But now watching them question, watching them wonder, she herself begins to tremble. She speaks to no one of it. But she avoids Odin's gaze. Because Odin sees everything, and Odin remembers. He walks the halls at dusk, touching the shields hung above the feast, each one etched with the name of a soul he has accepted. He listens to the murmurs. He watches the training fields. And he smiles not out of joy, but out of inevitability. He does not answer their questions, because he has already seen. In his throne room, where Hlidskjalf sits beneath the root of Yggdrasil, Odin can gaze into all realms. He sees Surt sharpening his blade in Muspelheim. He sees Fenrir twitch in his chains. He sees Jörmungandr shifting in the deep hell, sitting still among the dead, and the Norns winding thread tighter with each passing day. He knows Ragnarok will come, but he also knows it must come too late, because the longer the Einherjar prepare, the more powerful they become. Every day they fight, they grow. Every night they feast, their bonds tighten. They become not warriors, but a weapon. And Odin needs a weapon strong enough to break the end. So he says nothing, and the warriors wait. But some among them begin to dream. And in Valhalla, dreams are not meant to exist. Ulrich sees fire that does not burn. Yrsa hears cries from her family voices that should be long dead. Run walks in silence and hears the ground whisper her name. The dreams do not fade in the morning. They linger, like ash on wind. Then one night the feast is interrupted. A shield falls from the ceiling, one of the golden plates that form the roof of Valhalla. It crashes into the center of the hall, splitting a great table in two. Mead spills. Voices hush. Eyes turn not toward the damage, but toward the meaning. Never before had the shield of the honored dead fallen. It is a sign, but of what? Some whisper that it is a crack in fate. Others fear it is the beginning of the end. But Odin simply rises, lifts the shattered pieces, and says only, "The time grows near." Nothing more. The feast resumes. But laughter is quieter. The meat tastes of metal. And though the warriors still raise their horns, their eyes remain on the ceiling. The next day they fight harder, and they fall faster. Because for the first time since they died, the Einherjar begin to feel something that should not exist in Valhalla. Doubt. Is this paradise? Or a prison shaped like glory? Are they warriors of the gods? Or pawns on a board built to delay destiny? And if Odin truly sees the future, then why do they bleed every day in battles that do not count? The Valkyries offer no answers. The sky darkens by a shade, and somewhere beneath the fields, something stirs. Not Ragnarok, not yet, but the weight of prophecy. And a question begins to echo louder than any horn, louder than any song. What if we are not preparing for Ragnarok, but preventing it? In a hall where time does not pass, and death does not claim, even eternity begins to rot. What was once glorious becomes routine. What once inspired awe now echoes with doubt. And the Einherjar, once content to bleed for the sake of preparation, now wonder if they bleed for nothing at all. Alrek sharpens his blade longer now, not because it dulls, but because his hands need purpose. Yrsa speaks less at the feast, though her eyes burn with a fire no battle quenches. Run, who used to laugh first and loudest now, walks the perimeter of the fields alone, listening for something beyond the edge of the world. They are not alone. More and more of the chosen dead begin to feel it, the invisible thread pulling at their thoughts, unraveling the bindings of obedience that Valhalla had placed gently, subtly upon them. And then it happens. A dream, a vision, a voice. It comes to Alrek not in his sleep. He does not sleep, but in the silence between battles when the sky turns just slightly redder than it should. He sees a door, not in Valhalla, but beyond. Buried, sealed, ancient, and behind it a truth. He wakes with a gasp, though he had not been asleep. And in that moment he knows Valhalla is not what it seems. That night, in the shadows of the shattered table, still unrepaired since the golden shield fell, he speaks to the others. Yrsa listens, nods. Run smiles faintly, as though she has always known. And so they search, not with swords, but with steps. Not for enemies, but for walls, cracks, corners, doors. The great hall seems endless, but no place is truly without edge. They begin to find them. Rooms sealed for centuries. Passages that bend where none should. Stairs that spiral downward, impossible in a realm that should only rise. And they descend. What they find below Valhalla is not glory, not legend, but silence. Chambers of names etched in runes, names of warriors who never made it to the feast. Others, bound in quiet slumber eyes, closed their armor untouched. Souls who were called but never awakened. A prison beneath paradise, and at the center a great door. It pulses, alive. Alrek touches it and it breathes. A whisper escapes, not a word, a memory. He sees the creation of Valhalla not as a gift from Odin, but as a design, a mechanism, a machine built not to reward, but to store, to train, to hold back the end day by day, fight by fight. They are not soldiers preparing for battle. They are bricks in a dam against the flood of Ragnarok. Their battles are not practice, they are ritual, a pattern of violence meant to reinforce the cage of time. And they are the anchors. The Einherjar are what prevent the end. And the longer they fight, the longer fate delays. But if they stop, if they leave, Ragnarok begins. That is the truth behind Valhalla. Alrek stumbles back. Yrsa draws breath she does not need. Run runs fingers along the door's seam and smiles. This is not paradise, she says, it is sacrifice. And now comes the choice. Do they continue? Keep fighting, keep drinking, keep holding back the darkness at the cost of their freedom? Or do they open the door? Let Ragnarok come. Let the world end. Let the gods face the prophecy they have spent eternity avoiding. They do not know if all Einherjar will follow them. Some are too loyal, too broken, too bound by duty, but some will. They return to the hall. The next day, when the horns sound and the fields call, Alrek steps forward not to battle but to speak. His voice booms louder than any war cry, and thousands stop. The Valkyries descend, weapons drawn not to choose the fallen, but to silence the rebel. But Brynhilda stands between them. I have seen it too, she says, and in that moment the hall divides. The feast is abandoned. The laughter ends. Half step forward, blades raised not in challenge, but in choice. To follow, to leave, to begin the end. Odin appears, not in fury, but in sorrow. You were not meant to know, he says. You were meant to endure. But truth cannot be caged, and fate cannot be fed forever. 1,000 voices rise. The oath is broken, and the door beneath Valhalla opens. The wind that escapes it smells of fire, of ocean salt, of root and bone and stars. Ragnarok breathes for the first time in ages, and Valhalla shudders, not in defeat, but in release. The door opened, and the sky wept fire. What had once been bound the future, the fate, the final hour, rushed through that ancient breach, like flood through a crumbling dam. The winds of Ragnarok did not scream. They sang. And their song was one the Einherjar had always known, even if they had forgotten the words. In Valhalla, the golden shields fell one by one from the roof. Each crash echoed like a drumbeat of finality. Mead turned bitter in untouched horns. The great tables cracked down their centers. The spears that once formed the walls trembled in place, then turned inward, as if Valhalla itself no longer wished to hold its children. And Odin stood still. He watched as the warriors he had once gathered now stepped away from the field, not in fear, not in rebellion, but in reclamation. This was not treason. This was prophecy fulfilled. And yet for a god who had ruled for eons, it felt like the end of something deeper than time. Alrek stepped through the gate first. His foot touched a world no longer held in stasis, a world in motion. He looked up and the sun cracked in the sky. Not from heat, from strain. Yrsa followed, gripping a blade that hummed with memory. Run laughed as she crossed the threshold, her eyes wild with the joy of truth. And behind them thousands followed. Einherjar, who had fought every day for centuries, now marched not into illusion, but into fate. They did not know what lay ahead, only that it was real. For the first time since their death, they felt alive. Beyond the gate, the 9 realms burned. In Jotunheimer, giants moved like thunderclouds, their steps splitting stone. In Muspelheim, Surt raised his sword of flame and set the edges of the world ablaze. Jörmungandr coiled around Midgard, his breath poison, his hate vast. Fenrir howled as his chains shattered, his cry loud enough to silence stars. And hell, cold and calm, opened the gates of the dead. And from the smoking sky the Valkyries came, not to guide, not to watch, but to fight, to bleed, to choose themselves. Brynhilda led them, her wings scorched, her spear gleaming with stormlight. For the first time the Valkyries joined the Einherjar on the field, not as deliverers of death, but as warriors of it. And from the shadows of the broken cosmos, Odin entered the battlefield. Not alone. He rode Sleipnir with grim majesty, ravens swirling, one eye set on the wolf that raced toward him. Gungnir was in his hand, not a weapon now, but a symbol. A spear not of command, but of surrender to the wheel of destiny. They met, Odin and Fenrir, father of the gods, son of chaos. The spear flew, the jaws opened, and silence fell. When Odin vanished within the wolf's maw, the sky wept starlight. But the Einherjar did not stop. They surged forward, not to avenge, but to complete. The battle was not for Odin, it was for themselves, for the world they had left behind, for the new one yet to come. Alrek met a fire giant head-on, blade against flame, and fell laughing. Yrsa clashed with a beast born of forgotten sins and split it from throat to spine before her body collapsed beside it. Rune disappeared into the heart of Jörmungandr, a song on her lips, a dagger in her hand, and was never seen again. One by one, the greatest warriors of Valhalla gave everything, not for reward, not for resurrection, but for meaning. The world cracked, and then it breathed. Amidst the ashes, after the gods had fallen, after the serpent had been slain, after the fire had consumed even itself, there was stillness. And in that stillness, 2 figures emerged. A man, a woman, Leif and Lifthrasir, the last humans. They had hidden in the roots of Yggdrasil, beyond the reach of flame and blade and wolf. Not to escape, but to wait, to begin again. They stepped into a world that was no longer broken, but cleansed. No gods, no monsters, only memory, and soil, and sky, and possibility. And above them, on a wind that carried the scent of ash and mead and blood and courage, there echoed a final sound. Not a scream, not a roar, a song. The last song of Valhalla. The warriors were gone, but they had not died. They had become the foundation of the new world. Their stories would not be written in stone. They would be felt in every sunrise, in every act of bravery, in every soul who stood when standing meant death. Because Valhalla had never been a place, it had been a promise. And now that promise lived in the hearts of mortals, forever.